The March of Time. Today, thousands of young Americans are entering the armed forces, but many others are being rejected. Easy to detect are the physical ills which disqualify a man. Much less obvious are the sicknesses of the mind, yet they are fully as grave and as alarming. Rejected by the armed forces, an emotionally unstable individual is turned back into society to become lost again, one among the nearly 7 million Americans suffering from some form of emotional or mental ill health. Today, mental illness is by way of becoming America's #1 health problem. For years, what was called insanity was regarded as a problem for each state to solve as best it could. In nearly all state mental hospitals, little more than custodial care was provided. Few who were committed could hope to return to society. Many whose illnesses were comparatively mild at the start became increasingly worse until all hope of recovery vanished. Shocked by the appalling percentage of the emotionally unstable revealed by the World War II draft figures, Congress in 1946 passed the National Mental Health Act, which recognized for the first time that mental illness was a national problem. Witness to the government's intention to act is a huge modern building going up at Bethesda, Maryland, to house, among other groups, the National Institute of Mental Health, created by the National Mental Health Act. Keenly aware of the tremendous problems ahead is Dr. Robert H. Felix, director of the vast new project.
A primary objective of the National Mental Health Program is to increase our fund of scientific knowledge about mental health and about mental illness. Meanwhile, we should make full use of existing knowledge. We're not doing this. Why? Because there are not enough community mental health services, because there is not enough public understanding of the importance of mental health, and because there are all too few skilled mental health workers.
Largest U.S. training center for mental health workers is Topeka, Kansas, where 3 separate hospitals cooperate in an intensive program. Located at Topeka is the famed Menninger Clinic. Its teaching staff makes possible a 3-year training course for about 100 doctors who use the facilities of the cooperating hospitals. Dr. William C. Menninger, General Secretary of the Menninger Foundation, was Chief of Neuropsychiatry for the U.S. Army during World War II. His brother, Dr. Karl A. Menninger, is a trustee of the foundation and is Director of Education. Training is available not only for doctors, but also for other psychiatric personnel. To Topeka has also come the Veterans Administration, which cooperates in the effort to build up adequate personnel. Winter Hospital, with 1,400 beds, is one of its largest training hospitals. Psychiatric nurses and psychiatric aides spend more time with patients than any other members of the hospital staff. Their role is major, and their professions grow in stature year by year. The aides, who in the past mainly acted as guards, today take a helpful part in the therapy which is designed to bring disturbed patients back to reality. To be eligible for training as a psychiatrist, the doctor must be a graduate of an approved medical school and must have completed 1 year of general internship in an approved hospital. When the young doctor enters psychiatric training, he finds he must learn new procedures, terms, and treatment methods. One thing is most familiar, and he is reminded of its importance regularly, and that is the physical examination. In today's belief that almost every illness is a combination of physical and emotional factors, the psychiatrist must be able to diagnose and prescribe treatment in the light of both. Working closely with the psychiatrist is the clinical psychologist, who contributes special skills and knowledge to the diagnosis and treatment of mental and emotional disorders. While the psychiatrist seldom gives these tests, which determine a patient's mental capacity and provide understanding of his mental problems, he must have a working knowledge of them and their evaluation. The psychiatrist must also learn the vital importance of taking the patient's history in a way which will establish confidence and encourage the patient to recall seemingly unimportant details with complete freedom.
I'm going to ask you some very specific questions, Mr. Jones, because we won't have you here for very long. If you have no objection, you just answer them, and if you have some objections, then say so, and we won't go on with those questions. Now, I'd like very much to know about your babyhood. Were you told that you ever had any difficulty with feeding or anything of that sort?
No, not that I remember.
You started school at about what age?
About 5 years old, I believe.
Uh-huh. And where did you start in school? In the kindergarten?
Yes, sir.
How did you get along?
Well, fine, as well as I remember.
Mm-hmm. Did you have any particular teachers that you liked, anything of the sort?
I liked all my teachers except one, I remember.
Well, what was the trouble with this one?
I don't know, she just scared me most of the time. Holler at me and I'd run outside and vomit.
I see.
As his training progresses, the young psychiatrist learns the various techniques which will be at his disposal and how to use them. Among these are such physical methods as electric shock. Electric shock is used most frequently to relieve depression. Another form of physical treatment is the administration of insulin. Patients so sick they cannot even talk are frequently able to cooperate with the doctor after insulin injections. Properly used, such treatment has helped extreme cases of anxiety. In certain chronic illnesses, brain surgery may be indicated. A chemical such as sodium amytal is often administered by the psychiatrist in order to enable the patient to overcome an emotional block. It must be just enough to put the patient into a state between sleep and waking, so that he may be able to express his feelings more freely. Many persons think that psychiatry consists of only one thing, psychoanalysis. Actually, psychoanalysis is a prolonged and very specialized form of treatment. It properly can be given only by a doctor qualified as a psychiatrist and fully trained in the exact specialty of psychoanalysis. Treatment may go on for years. Cornerstone of psychotherapy is the relationship between the doctor and patient, most often established in the interview face to face. In such interviews, the doctor leads the patient to gain better insight into his own behavior.
Well, I got nervous and irritable. So I couldn't get along with people. I couldn't hold down a job. I had to be doing something all the time, but yet I couldn't hold down a job. I got to keep doing something. Smoking cigarettes or doing something with my hands all the time.
Like your cigarette lighter now?
Yes, I need something done. I need some help.
Effective in helping patients release emotional tension is drama therapy. In this group treatment, the psychiatrist sets up a situation and assigns the patients to act it out. Each patient is asked to react without thinking too carefully about what he ought to say. The patient named as principal actor pretends he is a young man whose father has complained about his keeping late hours. As he warms to the make-believe role, the patient looses a torrent of words in which the doctor may find clues to the underlying causes of his illness. Then the group reviews the situation.
But Joe, your father was only trying to help you.
Joe don't want to be helped. Remember when I tried to teach you to shoot pool?
You know, Joe, sometimes a fella can't make it all on his own. Sometimes he needs a little help. On the scene here, it was your father, maybe a friend. In the hospital, maybe your doctor.
The psychiatrist must learn which of the various occupational therapies to prescribe for a patient during the course of his treatment. In addition to occupying his time, the patient also may be learning a new vocation. In the hospital's own radio station, an activity helpful for certain patients provides entertainment for many.
I cannot deny, I bid my heart goodbye when the echo of your footsteps died away.
That record we just brought you was a favorite of Eddie Arnold's. It was a request from Joe Balmer and Bob Burns down on A5.
When a patient paints pictures or models in clay, the psychiatrist learns to appraise this work carefully and thereby gains insight into the nature of the illness.
This patient worked in clay. He was too compliant. Anybody could push him around. What he thought of himself is shown by this first self-portrait, childlike and undeveloped. It took him 6 months to admit his illness. By calling this inner strife, he frankly admitted that he needed help. It was a long while later that he developed the large aggressive piece.
When his training is complete, one of the most important roles a psychiatrist may assume is director of a community mental health clinic, of which there are about 500 in the U.S. today. Working at the community level, the clinic deals with mental health problems which, although minor at the outset, may develop into major disorders. At such clinics, the psychiatrist is customarily assisted by a clinical psychologist and a social worker. To them come cases like that of Martha Warren, 15 years old.
Mrs. Myers, what do you have on the Warren girl?
Her father, Thomas Warren, came to us 2 weeks ago and told us about their difficulties.
I've been having some trouble with my daughter, Martha. A while back, she was babysitting at a neighbor's and stole some money.
Mr. Warren told how he'd paid back the money. The neighbor suggested that Martha see a doctor, but that very night the girl ran away from home. Finally, Martha came back, but again she stole some money, this time from her mother. Remembering what the neighbor had said, Mr. Warren was now appealing to the guidance center for help. When the social worker called on Martha's mother, she heard a story of hard times. It was capped by a fire 2 years before when the Warrens lost nearly everything. Mrs. Warren had had to take a job, and she considered it only natural that Martha should do most of the housework. When Martha came to the guidance center, she appeared indifferent and sometimes resentful. The clinical psychologist, through a series of tests, sought better understanding of her problem, a clue to why she was stealing money. When she came to talk to the psychiatrist, Martha was almost sullen. By her terse answers, she made it plain she didn't want to be cooperative. Using patience and tact, the psychiatrist slowly succeeded in breaking her shell of indifference.
But your mother does have to work, doesn't she?
I guess so. Well, why do I have to do all the dirty work? Keeping house, I hate it. And I hate my mother for making me do it.
Your mother is tired when she comes home?
I suppose so. Well, why doesn't she make my brothers do some of it? Oh, they're too good for that. She's always on their side.
How do you mean, Martha?
Well, after the fire, we got the insurance money. We all needed new clothes. My brothers just got about everything they wanted. When I'd ask for anything, Mother'd always say, "Oh, you can make your old ones do."
Do you recall any particular time when your mother played favorites?
Once she promised to get me a new sweater. My other one was old, and I didn't like it.
When Martha's younger brother raced home to announce he'd have to have new track shoes if he was to win Saturday's race, Mrs. Warren hesitated only a moment before deciding that Martha could wait for her new sweater.
But you promised.
From such incidents, uncovered during several interviews, the psychiatrist pieced together the pattern of Martha's growing resentment, a resentment that had found outlet in her antisocial behavior. The team agreed that Martha's stealing stemmed from this resentment at being unloved by her mother and at being imposed upon by her family. With this knowledge, the social worker was able to convince the father and mother that Martha needed more affection from them and needed to feel that she too was part of the family. Soon it was no longer Martha's nightly chore to do the supper dishes all alone. Understanding had brought harmony to the Warren household, and the guidance clinic could take credit for forestalling a possible case of delinquency. Promoting the cause of prevention and treatment of mental illness at the community level, the National Association for Mental Health has been formed as a coordinating agency. Utilizing many means of communication, from specially prepared comic books to stage plays, the association seeks to get across to the general public the central truths about mental and emotional problems. At the same time, it is welding state and local mental health societies into a nationwide network. Heading the association is Aurin Root, New York lawyer. Medical director is psychiatrist Dr. George S. Stevenson, a leader in the mental health field.
And in concluding this report, Mr. Root, I'd like to mention that the people of Fitchburg, Massachusetts, have just organized their own mental health society.
What we have to have is 5,000 societies of this kind, hundreds of thousands of people all over the country working at this job. We can help them get organized, but in the last analysis, it's they, the people in the communities, who have to do the job.
Throughout America, in every city and town, the family doctor has the best opportunity for detecting and preventing mental illness. The spiritual leaders of the community have always been conscious of their role in maintaining among their parishioners not only moral equilibrium, but also peace of mind. The schools of the nation more and more are recognizing that they are dealing not only with the mind, but with the emotional development of youth. But in the last analysis, a healthy mental state is fostered by the understanding and cooperation of the parents of the nation. For in bringing into America's homes the simple concepts of shared affection, shared activity, and mutual respect for the individual, whether parent or child, lies the best hope for an ever-increasing betterment of the nation's mental health. Time marches on.